Well, hello there. You're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. In the next half hour or so, then, we'll see what's making the headlines with the director of the British Foreign Policy Group, Sophia Gaston, and the Sun's political editor, Harry Cole. Great to see you both. Hello. Front pages then, as ever, let's start with the Metro. Our royal sadness is their headline, reflecting the first statement by the Queen since Harry and Meghan's bombshell interview with Oprah Winfrey. The Telegraph picks out a line from the press release. Buckingham Palace said recollections may vary, suggesting there is some disagreement with the couple's version of events. The Sun also honing in, as you can see, on that phrase. It's the big story too for the Express. Recollections may vary, also their chosen headline. The Times goes with a different line. The Queen's assertion that matters surrounding race will be handled in private. The Daily Mail carries a poll in which 51% of participants said the pair should lose their titles. The Daily Mirror takes a sentimental approach, highlighting Her Majesty's declaration that the Sussexes will always be much-loved members of the family. Well, the Star reports on the departure of Piers Morgan from ITV's Good Morning Britain after his claims that he did not believe Meghan's comments about feeling suicidal. The Eye splashing with a survey which found 62% of those asked believe a 1% pay rise for nurses is not enough. The Guardian has a warning from the National Audit Office regarding cuts to public services as a result of the pandemic. Scotland's Press and Journal leads with First Minister Nicola Sturgeon accelerating the relaxation of Scotland's lockdown rules. So, Sophia, Harry are here. Sophia, let's start with the Express, which is a chosen headline for many a newspaper. Recollections may vary. What did you make of the Buckingham Palace when it finally came?
Well, it was an extraordinary statement. It was 4 sentences long, but very loaded, each of them carrying something very important within them. It was obviously had been pored over and was very carefully set out, and there had been a bit of a delay in the publication, and there is some suggestion that the Queen herself was making the last-minute changes to it. But it's certainly a sort of communications masterstroke, and it's really doing 2 things. The first is just to take a lot of the heat out of this situation. I mean, there obviously was an expectation that the royal family could have come out all guns blazing and actually sort of added fuel to the fire in what is a very incendiary situation. They've obviously said, we want to take all the heat out of this. Let's try and close this chapter for now and come back to it when things are feeling less like an open wound. And the second thing that it does is it makes very clear that the royal family regards this as a family matter. And there is a rather pointed use of language there to take a bit of umbrage with the way in which the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have rather sort of boldly been airing all the dirty laundry about what is fundamentally a family breakdown. And I think anybody who's ever had those sorts of rows within their family, and most people have, understand how wounding that is. And for all of this to be playing out in public is rather miserable. And I think it's just ultimately a very sad situation. And the royal family is just trying to say, let's all step back. And also, I think they're trying to just impose a little bit of their humanity there. They've been referred to repeatedly in that interview as the firm. And this is them saying, yes, we are an institution, but we're also a group of human beings and a family. And I think they do hope ultimately that something can be salvaged on that side of things.
Yes, family was mentioned more than once, certainly, wasn't it? So there's the Daily Mirror picking up on that point. Queen, we will always love you. It did do multiple things. We love you. We acknowledge your pain. We take the issue seriously, particularly of race, but we will deal with it in private. Is that good enough, do you think, in private? Is that the right decision? Does it stop it being a sort of continuing family soap opera if they deal with these matters in private?
Look, no, I don't think that any statement would have been able to put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak. There's always a sort of, people never really like to see how sausages are made. The magic of the monarchy, like the magic of Oz, is all about not, having to see behind the curtain. But Harry and Meghan have well and truly ripped that facade down. So it was an incredibly tough gig for the Queen and her advisors to come up with any statement that that would have managed to sort of make this go away. And so I don't think that is possible. But I do think this is a clever statement that has something for everyone in it, so to speak. Both sides of this sort of row that's fed into the sort of culture wars and transatlantic wars have something to take away from that. Obviously, the Queen, the hugely damaging accusations that, firstly, there was racism targeted straight at the centre of the royal family, accusations of that, and also a really damaging accusation that, a cry for help and mental health, something that the royal family have championed and really tried to put at the centre of their sort of, modernising agenda with younger royals speaking out about their mental health issues. The accusation that they ignored that really did need to be addressed by the monarch. But there is that crucial line, as Sophia says, some accounts will differ. People will have different different recollections of different things, which is a jarring moment. Very quickly sort of brought back with this great "I love you," we love you, you're part of the family moment. And I think that might be a slight tacit acknowledgement as well by the firm, as we're to call them these days, in that there had been a little bit, there was a lot of suggestion made, not just by the press, but by sort of friends of Meghan in various US magazines and the like, that this idea that they were being slightly shut out of the family. There was a famous moment where the Queen did her Christmas address with a picture of Charles, William, Kate, and their children, no picture of Harry and Meghan. There was a sort of feeling that, that they were, down the pecking order and weren't part of this core royal family. So then again, that something for everyone moment, the great, we love you moment, which the Mirror have picked up on. So yeah, a clever statement, 61 words, but the idea that it's going to make any of this go away is slightly wishful thinking.
Yes, it is always difficult being the spare heir, isn't it? It was, forever thus, and that's been part of the problem. The whole question's about whether Archie would be a prince, which would automatically mean he gets protection, the feeling that Harry, who served in Afghanistan, should automatically get more help, especially because Meghan's being targeted by the media and so on. So there's all of that became part of it too.
Without going, sorry to jump in, but without going full Piers Morgan, there are questions about the accuracy of that statement. And, there was an agreement that, the Queen's grandchildren, become princes and princesses, and that is the way it has been. And there is an expectation that all of the great-grandchildren who are in line to the throne will step up to that role. Like Edward's children, there is a formal way of doing this. It wasn't that Archie was suddenly the first one that wasn't going to be able to do this, and he will become a prince, should they want him to, when Charles is on the throne. So there is a little bit of broad brushes, should we say, in some of this rows. And, security, for example, is independently set by a committee that's, the Home Secretary is nominally in charge of security for royals, diplomats, and politicians. And she can't even set it for herself. It's all done on threat. So there's a little bit of bundling up some grievances there and sort of painting it all as a stitch up, when actually a gentle fact check on a few of the things said find some of those statements wanting.
We're talking of Piers Morgan, front pages all over the shop there, including the Daily Star. His face is everywhere, is it not? Piers off, Morgan quits GMB after the bust-up. 41,000 complaints to the telewatchdog, Sophia.
Yes, gosh, what an extraordinary television moment. Really just, it's all happening this week. I thought it was absolutely extraordinary. Piers Morgan's had this very sort of strange, inexplicable obsession, really, with Meghan Markle for some time. He seems to have a visceral hatred for her that has predated almost anybody else. And he, I think there is some part of him that has picked up on a mood amongst the British people of dissatisfaction with the move to America and so on. But he seems to take it to another level. And I think all of this just seems to have moved into quite hysterical space. And of course, he's stormed off in the middle of his breakfast program. He's, I understand he may have been given the opportunity to apologize or leave, and he seems to have decided he's off. I don't think this will be the last that we'll ever hear of Piers Morgan, but I think it does just show as well how emotive and really, I think everybody feels that they've got a vested interest in this. We've spent the last 4 or 5 years being divided into these Leave Remain camps. Now it feels we're being divided into these Meghan versus the royal family camps. And I think just tempers are really, whenever everybody's in a sort of on the edge, things are reaching a fever pitch. And so I think this is the first big casualty. And there is some sort of sense of closure in a way, because, of course, Piers Morgan started his career as a tabloid journalist. The big grievance coming from Harry and Meghan has been about their treatment in the tabloid press, which, of course, at times has been rather reprehensible. And I think this big sort of scalp, as they would see it, although it probably won't last for very long, because I'm sure he has still a few more lives left in him yet. I think that in some ways there's a kind of poetic justice to it all.
Harry, I know you're itching to get in.
Well, I think that Piers Morgan is is a great showman himself. I think what's struck me as slightly ironic this year is Piers has sort of made a massive name for himself this year of absolutely hounding politicians, especially Tory politicians, anyone who's on his show who's had anything to do with COVID and their government's bungling handling of the pandemic in the early days, has been absolutely hounded. And yet he applies that same vigour and vim to Meghan, and suddenly he's out of a job. And I think that really does just feed into the slight double standards here that the Sussexes are asking to be applied somewhat to how they are handled. They are happy to sit down and have their lives chewed over intimately and shared when they have full control over what's said and what is frankly an opinion. I disagree with Piers personally, but I think, he has been, it was a slightly daft thing to say, but I do think he's been slightly martyred to it. But frankly, I think he quite enjoys being martyred by it, and, is only going to sell more copies of his diaries, isn't it? Yeah,
well, we'll see where he pops up next, shall we? Just a quick word before we go to a break, Sophia, on COVID. Bit of a contrast with the Times. Chris Whitty, the Chief Medical Officer, ruling out an early end to lockdown, and then the pictures in the Preston Journal with Nicola Sturgeon, who has now announced some lifting of lockdown. I think she depressed people, hadn't she, by not lifting or not giving dates of when things would be lifted.
Yes, so Scotland has been just generally much more cautious than England. So actually, this is just more of an alignment between the Scottish and English lifting dates. But Professor Whitty came out today and made very clear that even though the vaccination programme is going brilliantly and cases are really down and we're doing very well on hospitalisations, there are still huge risks in opening up. And I think a lot of this is really about the variants and the potential for new variants that might not be very compatible with the vaccines that we're developing at the moment. If you still have huge swathes of the population unvaccinated, as there are at the moment, you open up very quickly. You absolutely risk those sorts of variants emerging, and that would really be an enormous setback. So he's come out today and just said, look, the timetable that's been set out is what's going to stand. And I think most British people understand that. That doesn't mean people aren't itching at to get outside, but I think that most people understand this absolutely must be the final lockdown.
And to see friends and family. Oh, Harry, we haven't got time. Was it going to be really, really quick?
Well, I'm old enough to remember data, not dates, and now the data shows that we could lift sooner. They're saying, oh no, the dates are wrong. So, who knows?
Indeed. It's a point that's been made, I'm sure. And they were asked about it today as well, weren't they? Plenty more still to come in the next part of our programme. As lockdown eases, are NHS staff being forgotten? We'll get more on the round.